we're going to move on to collaboration, and collaboration is something that's really important to Student Volunteering Week, and it's something we're doing. So NUS is collaborating with Student Hubs, and N is collaborating from City, and that's really important for us because it's nice to get different sorts of people together who have different thinking for things. I'm just going to talk for a few seconds, and then I'm going to hand over to Ben because he's an expert on this stuff. So it's around collaborating with universities or colleges or with schools. So as I mentioned before, it's really great if you can do that. If you're a university or college and you go and work with the schools in the area or universities work together, that's really, really good because you're bringing a new community of people together, and hopefully what you're able to achieve together is impactful than what you'd be able to achieve on your own. Student Volunteering Week is a really good way of collaborating with other, not just with colleges and schools, but if you're a student union volunteering service, it's a really good way of working with your institutional either volunteering team or perhaps the employability careers team, and vice versa. So if you're coming from institutional volunteering team, why don't you join up with your student union to deliver some Student Volunteering Week stuff? And as I said before, it could be that if you're coming from a student union perspective, you're from one part of the student union and you've not done much with another part of the SU, and so within the student union you can collaborate around student volunteers and non-student volunteers. Student Volunteering Week is a really good way of you being able to instigate that activity. So talking about the community and going into the community that is a common interest, go to community groups, volunteering groups, charities locally, and working with volunteers who already work with them, and really cool activities that you can do around that. We're going to talk about this later, so I'm going to hand over to Ben in a second, but just to Ben, the reason that we think it's important to talk about collaboration today is because it's one of the key things that we're looking for in the grant funding applications, and we're going to talk about those later on when we talk about money. But I'll over to Ben now because he is our resident expert on collaboration. So Ben, if you could just tell people about who you are and why we've got you here.
So, first of all, for having me here, and it's to be called a resident expert of collaboration, but I suppose I guess what I to do is to kind of share some experiences that I've had in the process of helping to coordinate London Student Volunteering Fortnight in 2013. So I guess just to give you a bit of background about me, I was the Community Volunteering Officer at City University London from 2009 to about 2012. My role's changed slightly now, so I'm called Development Manager. I'm based in our careers service, but volunteering service is still very much a big part of what we do. So London Student Volunteering Fortnight is something that, as a group of universities in London, we have an opportunity for us to really focus on, at that particular time of the academic year when students are just kind of coming in, getting to know each other, and to find out more about volunteering, I suppose, to give them an opportunity to meet students from other universities, and to also get involved in some one-off things that would give them a taste of volunteering without necessarily requiring them to make a regular commitment to volunteer. So we kind of had run this thing since 2008, and it rapidly became an annual fixture, something that we really enjoyed doing. But it was also a huge amount of work, and for any one person to kind of take on the ability of kind of making sure that it happened felt very unfair because it was something that we were all So I guess I wanted to talk about my experience of basically being in meeting with what was the Workers in Student Community Volunteering Forum for London. It's now Volunteering Network. But we what we should do for London Student Volunteering Fortnight, and it kind of emerged that we had a sense in we all needed to do stuff, but that there was a sense we needed somebody to sort of hold to account for the things that we were going to do. So I kind of volunteered myself for a role that I I created called Taskmaster General, which was basically and asks people, have you done that thing that you said you were going to do by this date? So it sounds like a very big ask, actually. I guess one popular role is that you kind of have to ask people things. Everyone's busy, everyone's very focused on what they're doing, and so you kind of always feel you're pressing people. So I guess the starting really for all of this was we really collaborate on this to make it work. And I think the reason why we decided that collaborating on this was difficult, to be honest. So London is a huge geographical area. From universities from the north, south, east won't necessarily be able to travel all from South London to North London to do one particular event. So we wanted to make sure that we had a reasonable geographical spread across London. It seemed that the best way to do that would be to group together as institutions in the respective regions of London. So we divided London up into 5 parts. So we had a kind of North London, Central London, East, South and West groups. And then we centrally, but all encourage the groups to meet out as individual groups. And that way we were able to run, I think in total, about 20 events over the course of the fortnight. And it was perceived to be quite a successful event, but there were lots of things that we learned across and along the way. So I would share some of my tips for collaboration based on that experience, and I hope that's useful.
Don't say at this point, don't panic about writing them all down, because you can get the slides, we'll send them to you afterwards. So just take notes about what Ben's saying. So, sorry.
Oh, no problem, thank you. It really is understand why you're going to collaborate and what you're likely to gain from it. Just because collaborating is hard work and you have to be kind of committed to it and understand what you think you're going to get out of it. Often it can seem a bit thankless because you're having to ask people to do things when they're very busy. So I think in that collaboration is a very difficult role, and it's also very you have to manage all the different kind of ambitions that people have and their expectations of what the events are going to be, and you have to kind of try and collaborate all of those things and make it all work nicely. And then you have unexpected things that happen along the way. So if you, from the get-go, why you're doing this and why you want to be involved, and you've kind of got everyone's buy-in, see so much further along the way. And I think about buy-in sort of takes me into our second point. So the terms of your collaboration it's a really valuable thing to do. In that situation, we're obviously working with about 15 different universities around London, and the scope of London Student Volunteering Fortnight was really largely based on these one-off events. We basically set down a ground rule that if you participate, wanted to say that you're involved, you have to commit to running one-off event. We felt that if each organisation, each university ran one-off event, it wasn't too big a thing to ask, but the whole would be a big number of events. So having that as a term of the collaboration enabled people to decide whether they wanted to be involved or not. And if you clarify that really on, sometimes those kind of things can you can get into trouble later on. So somebody will think that they're kind of being collaborative, and actually they're not contributing the same as somebody else, and that gets people feeling a bit resentful perhaps. So it's just really useful to kind of say, this is what you need to do if you want to be a part of our collaborative thing. This is maybe the most important point, and it's not essential when you're collaborating to have somebody over the whole project, but I think we agreed in that process that it would be useful, and I kind of volunteered. I basically asked everybody's permission to say, in a few months' time, I'm going to ask you for stuff, and you might be busy. Are you okay with that? And is this something that you agree to? So I think that sense of rather than taking control, because it's all about empowerment of the different groups who are contributing towards making this thing a sum that is larger than all of its constituent parts. So if your job seems like it would benefit from having someone in a kind of coordinating role, and you want to do that, and I would certainly encourage you to do that, because there is no shortage of difficult things to do which people don't necessarily want to put themselves forward for. And in terms of where you develop, I think that's where you do most of your development. But if you find yourself in that position, try not to be like, I'm going to do this. Try and kind of seek that in a way that everyone feels that that's something that they've agreed to, and move a lot further down the line. It's interesting that I'm kind of saying this over a webinar process, but I do think that actually there's something in person, and being able to see people's reactions as you're suggesting things and as you're working through things. It's really important during that planning phase, so you have a sense of we're all part of this thing together, and I think it clears up any of those perhaps little things that start to feel like they're not quite working out. You can clear those things up really on. So try commitment to maybe even booking the dates in advance, like a timeline that you're working to. I think that if you can meet up frequently, maybe, so for us, we tried to meet up on a monthly basis initially. We left it to the kind of individual work out how frequently they needed to meet based on that, and with mixed success, it kind of worked okay. But on to the next slide. So is a really useful tool. So I think the 4 points have really been largely around the planning process and thinking about what you do, but at some stage the plan has to kind of turn into action, and I think that the best tool for that is to have a project outline is. So in the outline, if you can just make clear which individual is responsible for each action that you've decided needs to happen, and when it needs to be done, checklist that you kind of keep on top of. So I would encourage you to check it frequently. I've said weekly here, but again, that kind of worked for the time scale of that project. It may be that you need to check it more frequently or less frequently, depending on what works for you. Up on everything that isn't quite on target, and I think a calendar to do that, or to chase up the agreed actions, that will increase the likelihood of success, because quite often is that each action is kind of the contingency where it depends on the person having done something else, and if it hasn't happened, it can slow everything down and take everything off course. So again, having just a general role allows you to kind of in and crack in a nice way, sure that everything's happening. Again, specific to a context, but it may be useful for you as you think about what kind of project or activity or event you might want to run. But we divided it up into geographical regions. So I was kind of coordinating the whole London region, but then we kind of broke down into different institutions that have geographical areas. So in East London, for example, we had we had the University of East London, and I think we were lucky enough to get some support from London Met, who decided to move over to their eastern campus, although technically they probably fit in the north and south area more. But what we did break down into those regions to agree maybe like somebody to over that region, because what would happen, each university would kind of get together and they'd have their ideas, but it seemed that some of the things they were, it was kind of like, actually this is a bit similar to what's going on over there. So I think that maybe way of getting around that is just to be clear at the outset who has the ultimate say-so for what is going to happen in your region, and we'll report that back. The seventh is very simple and straightforward, but share out the responsibilities in an even, fair way. One of the things that we did was we had a separate media team who were going to kind of go out and try and get the City Hall on board. We've had some support from them in previous years, and in this year in particular, the team was really involved, and that was great. But the media team, what happened was every single member of the media team ended up a new job that summer, and ended ended up kind of moving on to niches, and that left us kind of with a bit of a gap. So kind of shared out responsibilities. It didn't do much because other people were able to step up and take on additional responsibility, but it felt, yeah, people might have felt a bit resentful. Yeah, my 8th point, I think that process of delegation is a really important one, and learning when to compromise can be quite difficult, especially if you're the kind of person in your personal life where you like to know exactly what's going on. I think to responsibility to somebody else, you use the ability to say, I want things to go exactly the way that I would have done them. And learn, but ultimately, that's the kind of that you get of having to do the job yourself. The downside of that, or the offside, is it doesn't get done. Perhaps in might like a valuable lesson to learn, but it's a tough one to learn too. The last 3, I'll try and be quick with these ones.
Carry on.
Okay. As long as everyone's okay for time. Thank people relentlessly. Obviously, the whole process relies on people's goodwill unless you're paying them, which I don't. So you appreciate everybody's contribution towards this larger whole, kind of trying to make them is a fit for that. As part of the 10th point, make sure that you evaluate how the collaboration worked out, in case you want to do it again, or in case you decide, let's never do that again. But think about kind of the way in which you work together, what things could have worked more smoothly, and how you've all kind of learned through the process, so that you can kind of take that forward, I guess, in the next time you run it. Enjoy the process as well, have fun with it. It's going to be a slightly hard process, it's going to be grueling, but it's hugely rewarding as well. And as I say, I really do feel that you can have a much impact on the whole when you collaboratively. So, and then the nice other side of it is that everyone can claim a share of that success, and it feels great. So thank you for listening. I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Ben. If anyone has any questions for Ben, scribble them down in the chat bar, and at the end we've got a few minutes for questions. So if you've got anything for Ben, specific project, or anything that he's just said, please pop them down and stay with us till the end of the webinar. So with some collaboration for you. So now we'll talk about cash. We'll talk about funding and fundraising. Fundraising, and not all of your SVW activities, they may be relevant for different projects, but it's worth knowing that there's more than one type of fundraising. So we're going to cover that in quite a lot of detail in a minute, because we're going to talk to you specifically around the Volunteering Week grant funding and how you can apply for that. But usually given for a specific project or purpose, usually loans, so they don't usually need to be paid back. So it's usually money for you to spend on something quite specific. In our case, it's for Student Volunteering Week, Good Deed Day activity. Usually legally binding between a couple of people or two different parties, and it will usually mean that the people getting the money will be giving some value to the people who are giving them money. It's usually a sum of money that's agreed within the contract, and it's quite specific, again, like a grant, but binding. Is a short agreement usually between two parties, and there's usually mutual benefit. So sponsoring business might benefit from enhanced corporate image or some publicity or access to target customers. So you're not in student union societies where they get sponsored by a dance company if they're the dance society, and that the dancewear company gets lots of promotion. A lot of the time this happens with students, that they run fundraising events for, whether that's for charity or it's for their own volunteering project or their own group. So types of fundraising. Simply. Who is? So who have access to that you can apply for grants or sponsorship or some sort of contract. You might have that within your department, so you might be able to apply for funding for student union. It might be that you have to do your sabbatical officers for funding if you are a sabbatical officer, and there'll be funding for you to use for projects. Also, if you're working in a students' union, you can apply to a university or college for funding. University or college, there'll be specific pots of money for you to apply to. More detail about that because it's very specific based on your institution. Externally, there's kind of four main areas where funding comes from. First one is charitable trusts or foundations. An example to give for that is that there's a trust called the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust. They give grants to student groups to run Holocaust memorial events. It's quite big, anything back in terms of they don't want any money back, and they're grants, like Student Volunteering Week grants, but it's a specific purpose, usually in a specific time frame, which is January. So government, and this is national and local government, you find it easier to access government funding locally than you nationally, but that doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't access national government funding. It's in that government are largely moving from grant-based funding to contract-based funding, so they tend to want something quite specific and for back in return, which is making it more contract-based, whereas with grant freer and it usually legally binding. And hearing week, I'd encourage you to talk to your local governments for your county council is. There's some mutual interest there, which I think is boring. The third on the list is corporate or commercial. So, for example, Barclays sponsored Volunteering Week. They're a commercial. They've got money to spend on this kind of activity, so they give money to this project. But in your case, there might be local businesses or local commercial organisations that want to support Student Volunteering Week. They want to support student social action. That's definitely worth exploring. And it's really on common ground, so don't just assume because they're a business that they've got loads of money that they want to spend on you. Trying to find common ground or common objectives that you can both achieve through them giving you some money. On their individuals. Now, I don't see this happening a lot in the student movement. In the American student movement, it does happen a lot with alumni giving. So, particularly wealthy or generous alumni giving money to specific volunteering projects that they're passionate about, or clubs or societies or volunteering groups. Something that's happening more in the UK, so definitely something to consider, whether that's something that you could do, and have a chat with your alumni office about that, because they enjoy doing projects which are good for press. So anything to do with volunteering and students getting out in the community is something that is quite a thing. So whether internal or external, and whichever funder you were thinking of working with multiple funders, so don't worry about that. That only becomes there's specific contractual things that say you can only work with one funder. So maybe that a commercialisation wants to work with you, but they have to be the only funder. Apart from then, if that's not a case, then you can have multiple funders. That don't just think about money. Gifts, so getting them to give you something that is worth money is really helpful too. So maybe that there's a t-shirt company that you know that for a product can give you t-shirts at a discounted rate or free, and that is worth money and it saves you money in having to buy it. So think as well. I'm just going to cycle. There's kind of three main parts to a fundraising cycle. Research, I would say, is probably the most important area, because you need to think about what you need, why you need it, looking at all those different funders, so thinking about who it is that you want to speak to or work with on getting some money or gifts in kind, and then what those common goals are, what the objectives are, really important. When you're in the ask, working with the most appropriate methods of approaching a funder. So it's like what Rachel was saying about stakeholders and how you communicate with them. Your stakeholders may be funders, and so in principle, thinking about how you talk to them, whether there's a specific application form that you have to fill in, or whether it's a certain person that you have to talk to, try and find out. And if you can't find that out, then use your kind of common sense to work how might be the most appropriate way to make this ask. Outcome. Successful, there's stuff that you should probably do. So if you're unsuccessful, try not to be shy and ask whoever it is that you were trying to get the money from why you weren't successful, because it will inform next time, or might open up new opportunities. They may say, well, we can't fund you, but there's this other organisation that could do. And then if you are successful, there's lots of different things you'll have to do depending on the type of funding that you've got. Evaluation and monitoring the project. So, for example, for the Barclays funding, we have to make a note of all of the different things that we achieve over not just Student Volunteering Week itself, but over the whole process. So the fact you're all in this webinar with us is something we'll note down to take to Barclays, because that's showing the impact of the Volunteering Week activities, which is something that they really care about. Activity. I don't think we've got time for that, and I think actually it's more important that we go into some specific calls and talk about the Student Volunteering Week grant funding. I'm just going to show you what I was going to ask you to do so that you can do it in your free time. I'm just going to ask you to think about who potential funders might be for your Student Volunteering Week activities. So just put down that question, and you can listen to this recording again if you'd like to. But have a think about that, and this is a really good time to do it, because you've still got time to do that research and planning and make the ask appropriately. So that you get some help with your Student Volunteering Week grants. So I'll hand over to Rachel.
Okay. Just as we did last year, this year we are giving out 10 £200 grants. You can see the website there where you can apply for these grants. It's an online application form this year rather than a Word document. But the questions are very similar, and the deadline for this is Friday the 5th of December, so that is coming up quite quickly now. Just go to the next slide. Here are the criteria for the grant application. These are explained in detail on the website, but I'll just talk you through each one now. So in terms of impact, by that we mean that activity should have really clear aims, outcome, and outputs, and a plan for how you're actually going to measure the impact of that event. And if you want to find out more about impact, you can listen to the first webinar that we did a month ago, which was all impact, and we'll make sure that we share that with you again in a follow-up email. This is collaboration. So looking for activities that are a collaborative effort between two or more universities or colleges, and or a partnership between your institutions, local charity, social enterprise, business, etc. So I really love for the activity to offer leadership opportunities to some of your volunteers to enable them to participate in the planning and delivery of the event. So that's really important for us. Student appeal, so it needs to be something that can engage a wide variety of students, so both appealing to those who have been involved before, but also those who haven't been involved. Finally, stakeholder appeal, so something that has the potential to engage stakeholders such as MPs, vice chancellors or principals, local press, really allowing you to raise the profile of that engagement. All of these points really do come back to the fact that their activity should have a big impact and really make a sort of tangible difference and have some clear outcomes. Those are the criteria for the grants. As I said, all of the information is on the website, and the deadline is the 5th of December. Just to probably got 5 to 10 more minutes of content, so if we do a little bit past 1 o'clock, apologies to those of you who have to go, but we are recording it. We are recording it, and we'll carry on. Okay, so good deed.
Sorry, just to interrupt, we've had a question from Plymouth, Alex. Can students directly apply for these grants, or do grant applications have to come from the volunteering office?
Absolutely fine for student groups to apply. I think on the application form you might have to put your contact details, but as long as they do that, then that's absolutely fine. We definitely welcome applications from student groups. Again, that's a fantastic way to give them sort of skill development opportunity, because grant writing is a really fantastic skill. Grant writing is a great skill to have.
I think to make sure you're involved, because we probably have to put funds in the SU or the volunteering team's account.
Yes, absolutely. So as long as you are aware of what is being sent on behalf of your institution, that's the crucial thing. Okay, moving on to talk about D-Day, which is on Wednesday, the 25th of February. So we've moved this from Monday to Wednesday, following your feedback from last year. Good D-Day was something that we introduced last year. There were about 60 teams, about 3/4 of the teams last year got involved in Good D-Day. Good D-Day is really closely linked to all of our themes from today, so fundraising, collaboration and community. And the idea is that it's a national day of social action, but we're not prescribing any one particular activity this year. We really trust you all to know your institution and your community best. That being said, we do have a couple of big broad themes for you to think about. One of them is collaboration, so really looking beyond your campus and collaborating with other universities and colleges and also community groups. Secondly, impact. So how can you make a really tangible difference? So good deed activity shouldn't be sort of publicity stunts. We're looking for things that can really, make a tangible difference, have that real sort of before and after effect. So those are two things to bear in mind when planning Good Deed Day activity. From great activities that happened last year. So this is one from Exeter. They were unsure of what to do and what would be most popular, so they thought, well, why don't we put it in the hands of the students who we actually want to participate in these activities. So they involved the students in planning the activities as well as delivering them. And to do this, they sort of came up with a short list of opportunities that they could run with partners in the local community. And then they put those opportunities online and encouraged students to vote for them. Alongside this, they also had polls on campus. Here you can see, this is sort of a screenshot of the website, and you can see how many votes each project got. And I thought that was quite a cool way of engaging a really wide variety of people. Competition amongst societies could see who could get the most members to sign up. And actually, I think the History Society ended up running one of the events as well. So you never know what happens when you start a competition. They also involved relevant university departments. So they actually approached the grounds team of the university because a couple of their activities were to do with gardening and sort of cleaning up things. And the grounds team ended up not only donating tools and materials for them to actually do some of that gardening, but they actually sent 2 members of the grounds team to the event as well to be volunteers on the day as well, and they shared their expertise. So the students actually learned a huge amount about what they were doing and got to know some staff at the university who might never come into contact with. And then one final point on this one is that they set up a sort of sponsorship package system, which I thought was really innovative, where they sort of had a list of things that they were looking for, so paint, materials, funding, and with each contribution that a local business could make, in turn, they had written down very clearly what that business would get in return. So for X amount of money or for X cans of paint, you mention on the web page or on the flyers. A greater donation, you might be able to put up a banner, your particular business back at the event. And I just thought that was to have that sort of structure when you approach a potential sponsor is a really great impression to make on them. Holloway. So this was a partnership between the Community Action, the SU and the local college. And they really decided to focus on the immediate community. There was a local estate on their doorstep, so they focused on that. And they got the sort of beneficiaries, the people in the community involved in planning that activity. So they local residents for project ideas, and that was done with paper forms, knocking on people's doors, sending out emails. These were the main tasks that they got, so sort of litter picking, recycling, footpath cleaning, gardening. And then in terms of funding, they actually got their funding matched by the university community liaison team. So they received a grant from us. That put them in a really strong position to go to somebody and say, look, Student Week team believes that this is a really, really worthwhile activity. We've had that endorsement from them. We're going to match the funding. And you can see a little screenshot there of some fantastic press that they got in a local newspaper as well. And Liverpool, something that we really liked about this example was that they picked a really clear theme for their day. So I think this was actually the theme for a week, and the theme was food poverty. And this was a partnership between a few different groups, as you can see there on the slide. And they collected lots of food and did some publicity in the city. They had sort of physical collection points and information stands. They collected a huge amount of food overall, and then also had a full opportunity for volunteers actually sorting the foods at the local food bank. And because of this fantastic collaboration and the fact that it brought so many people together and the fact that they collaborated with local food banks, they actually ended up getting a visit from there and some really fantastic photos and press as well. Examples of some activities from last year. Many more. So if you feel like you did something really, really exciting last year that you want to shout about, please pop it in the chat bar, send us a little email case study. We can pop it on the website. We would love to be able to share all of your stories as well.
They could write a blog post about it.
Write a blog post about it, which brings us on to the next slide. This is just a reminder of some of the things that we've got coming up. So the blog launch is coming really, really soon, and we're really excited about this. It's going to be built into the website, and the opportunity to post your own into the website directly, which will then get published. So if you've got ideas for blog entries, if you'd like your students to write about something that they're doing, if you just to get some fantastic collaborations going or a funder on board and you want them to write, honestly, the more the merrier in terms of blog entries.
If someone wants to write a summary of today's webinar and what they're learning from it, that would be really interesting, I think.
Yeah. Of things come up on Monday, so this is next Monday, we've got the deadline for registering for the boot camp, which we're going to give you more information about in just a second. The boot camp itself is on the 3rd. We're judging the t-shirt designs on the 5th. We're really excited about this. Take a look at Twitter on the 5th if you want to know what's happening with that. We had 8 entries to the t-shirt competition, so thank you all so much for publicising that. 5th is also the grant application deadline. The 12th is the award nominations deadline, and also on the 12th we will be announcing the winners of the grant application. Again, all this information is on our website, so do refer back to that if you would like more information.
Just a bit about the boot camp then.
So this is a quick slide giving you an overview of the boot camp. Again, all on the website. So we've got this for 100 students. We're encouraging you to register by next Monday. We'd initially start out with a limit on student places, but we've scrapped that now. You're welcome to send as many students as you like, so please do feel free to send committees, groups, etc.
It's free.
It is completely free.
It's just the travel to get there.
Yeah. Staff can attend too, so if you'd like to accompany your students by means, on the Eventbrite where you can register for tickets, there's a separate staff ticket registration, so please do that. And this is the idea of the programme. So just to highlight that we're doing a combination of interactive workshops, and each workshop will have sort of takeaway tools and resources that the students can take away and continue working on after the event. And these workshops will be accompanied by talks from some really fantastic people from the sector who thought about campaigns and sort of engaging with local communities, with stakeholders. It should be really inspirational for the students that attend.
Okay, end of our kind of the main content of today. We've just got another slide here which talks to you about what's happening next in terms of today's webinar. So I'm going to give you, we can give you about 2-3 minutes if anybody has any questions based on what we've talked about. So to remind you what we've talked about, just talked about community. So we talk about those different types of community and how you might work with not just your local community, but the communities on your campuses, and work with different teams who you usually work with, and what people's interests are and where they're based. Really great chat from Ben talking about his learning from managing London Student Volunteering Fortnight. And so if you've got any questions for Ben, then jot those down now because he'll be with us for the next few minutes. I'll talk to you about some information about how you might fundraise either for Student Volunteering Week activities or for other activities that you want to fundraise for, who the funders are. We talked about different types of fundraising and really helpfully went over how you can get the grant funding from us, from the Student Volunteering Week team. Any questions at all about any of that stuff, in the chat bar now, and we'll cover those now. Sure, now then you can tweet or email us, and the contact details are on the screen. So if you go away and carry on with your day and then think, oh, I've just thought of a really good question, do know. So on the screen you can see the email address, info@volunteeringweek.org.uk, the website, which is there too. You can contact us on Twitter, and find the Facebook page for Student Volunteering Week on there too. In terms of, we will be sending you the slides from today so that you've got all of that content. We'll do the recording for today, and you can also access more information about all of the things that Rachel just talked about on the Student Volunteering Week website. We have a bank of previous SVW programs from other unions to help with ideas for new activities. About some of those last year's activities.
Definitely. We'll also be uploading some of those to the website as well. Our goal is to get those all up in the next couple of weeks. So.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. And then other webinars. So on December, we'll be doing one more Student Volunteering Week webinar at the same time as this one, until 1. Shouting about Student Volunteering Week, that will focus on press, applications and social media. So how can you, when you've got all of these really good activities planned, how to tell people about them? How can you engage local press? Some tips for using social media and making that really good. To talk about like general communications with the people that you're working with your students. And then this webinar series will continue, but won't be focused on Student Volunteering Week. The first one is on Thursday the 15th of January, and that's talking to students' unions and the general election and how you can engage societies, clubs, volunteering groups, student fundraisers in registration in the general election. March and April, we'll be covering student media, we'll be covering second belief in student unions, and we'll 15, and they're all free, and they all take place 12 to 1, just like this one. So that's it. Questions? You've got about 1 minute to ask us those. And so much for your insight. It was really, I learnt loads, so helpful. Thanks.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
And thank you. And so I'll put the details back on the screen so you've got those.